What's up, guys? This is EJ Holland with thewolverine.com, and we are back with another Q&A show here exclusively on our YouTube channel. Guys, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel for free, get notifications every time breaking news happens, so don't miss out. Like this video, help us get in front of other Michigan fans, and subscribe so you don't miss out on all our content. And as always, if you want even more Michigan recruiting and team information, transfer portal is here. Head over to thewolverine.com. You can sign up today, get 50% off your annual subscription over at thewolverine.com. Again, get exclusive insider information on everything Michigan recruiting, the team, transfer portal, basketball, and so much more. Plus, we have a message board community of thousands and thousands of users. So head over to thewolverine.com, join the discussion, get the intel, 50% off your annual subscription. No promo code required. Just go over to thewolverine.com and sign up today. All right, guys, before we dive into your questions, tonight's show is sponsored by Dollar Shave Club. When you rep your team, don't stop at the jersey. Dollar Shave Club's collegiate razor handles combine grooming with glory, letting students, grads, and fans show their school spirit in style. From the sink to the stadium, shave with school pride. Visit dollarshaveclub.com today to grab your college handle and go blue. So as you can see, Dollar Shave Club has their handle for grooming glory. It's a diamond grip handle, amazing blue colors, has the block M for only $8. I mean, this is a great opportunity to take advantage. It is limited edition, so might be going away soon. So head over to Dollar Shave Club, get your diamond grip handle. And as you can see, I'm kind of raggedy today. I'm definitely going to be using my diamond grip handle from Dollar Shave Club. All right, guys, so we will be answering the questions in the order in which they came. If you're not familiar with the show, you are limited to 3 questions. If you want to ask an additional question, you can leave a super chat. We had plenty of people here early. The questions will be answered in the order in which they came. If you want to skip the line, you can also leave a super chat. That money goes directly to my travel budget so I can continue to see top prospects around the country and bring you guys the news directly from the source. And yeah, sorry, I didn't have a show last week. I was actually traveling using that travel budget. I went out to Under Armour's media day, so talked to a ton of 2027 Michigan recruits about Kyle Whittingham and the new staff. So let's go ahead and answer the question. So we are talking portal and recruiting today. Zachary Pizot says updates on John Henry Daly and Smith Snowden. Any other Utah guys we should be watching? So John Henry Daly and his camp, they have kept things extremely close to the vest. The only reported visit they have is Notre Dame, which I believe happened today. Michigan's very involved there. BYU's very involved. And for those of you that don't know, Daly was a very productive edge at Utah going into this week. He was ranked as the number 6 overall player in the transfer portal per On3. So he is a big target for the Wolverines. They've had plenty of discussions with him. Now it's all about getting him on campus. Smith Snowden is another big-time player from Utah. The Wolverines are looking for portal help on the back end. Snowden, a terrific cover corner, really proved himself at Utah. Speedy corner, I believe ran below a 10.7 100 meter in high school. He would immediately become one of the fastest guys on the team. He is visiting tomorrow. He is taking a look at other schools like Oregon and Georgia. He was at Colorado on Monday. Michigan will get a shot to really move the needle tomorrow. Obviously, both of these guys are very familiar with the new Michigan coaching staff. Both played under Kyle Whittingham at Utah, and obviously Whittingham brought over several assistants as well. So yeah, I think Michigan is a strong contender for both Daly and Snowden. They just have to get Daly on campus, and they really have to move the needle with Snowden on his visit tomorrow. Any other Utah guys we should be watching? Yeah, so a couple others. Teo Johnson is another defensive back worth monitoring. He was at Ole Miss today, Michigan looking to potentially get him on campus along the defensive line. Dallas Fakalahi, Michigan, obviously bringing in Utah's defensive line coach. There's a connection there. So, those are a handful of Utah guys, and not really the big influx of Utah players that maybe some expected, but obviously Snowden and Daly and Teo Johnson, they would be the most notable, highest graded guys that are on Michigan's portal board. Zachary Pizzo says, is the wide receiver situation just depending on Marsh? If he stays, what caliber of player do we take? If he doesn't, do we go all in? Michigan's approach to wide receiver recruiting and portal recruiting has been the same since the NIL era started. And it's just a position that they don't spend the big bucks on. Now, they have spent NIL at the position. They have used NIL to land guys like Travis Johnson this cycle or Andrew Marsh last cycle, but they haven't spent to land a top 3 wide receiver in the portal or a 5-star level wide receiver on the recruiting trail. Michigan just hasn't historically done that. And I don't think it really depends on Marsh. I just don't see them doing it, this portal window or, this, obviously they didn't do it this recruiting cycle. So until we actually, it's kind of a see it to believe it situation, just because Michigan hasn't really valued that. And when you look at the portal options right now, Michigan isn't involved with any, or they're not a strong contender for any of the top 5 portal wide receiver ranked portal wide receivers right now. And you've seen a lot of guys already start to come off the board. So, I think right now the best case, I'll just say this, the best case scenario for Michigan right now would be to retain Andrew Marsh, and then on top of that, add 1 or 2 really quality contributors out of the portal, which is what I wrote today. I just don't see them landing a high-end portal guy with the way things are trending right now. Zachary Pizzo's last question says, are you hearing, we have a super chat from Sean O'Hara, any cornerback transfers we are in on? Yeah, so, like I said, Smith Snowden, he is set to visit tomorrow. He's the big guy on the board. He's, again, a speedy corner, really talented cover corner, will be a guy who is pursued by some of the other big programs around college football. Like I said earlier, Oregon's involved, Georgia's involved. He can play some nickel as well. There's a lot to like about Smith Snowden and what he can bring to Michigan. So, if you're looking specifically at corners, Smith Snowden's definitely your guy. There are definitely others in the secondary that Michigan is working on. I mentioned Teo Johnson out of Utah earlier. They had Michael Hurst Jr. from Northern Arizona on campus, more of a safety, but definitely a guy to know in the secondary as well. So it looks like they're definitely looking for prospects on the back end out of the portal this window. Zachary Pizzo says, are you hearing anything about Justice Haynes returning? So I only handle portals coming in. I don't handle portals going out in terms of players on the team. So that's more of a question for Chris Ballas and our team guys. I think that, keeping Justice Haynes would be big. Obviously, they retained Tony Alford, and, that could certainly help. But that's more of a question for our team guys. Tyson Smith says, it doesn't look like we'll land an elite portal wide receiver. Do we get one in the 2027 class? It really depends if Michigan spends NIL. Obviously, there are 3 wide receivers, in the Midwest that Michigan could really spend on: Monson Sales, Dakota Warren, Quentin Burrell. I think Michigan will continue to be a player with all of them despite the coaching change. But again, I think it really comes down to, will Michigan pony up? Will they pay bigger dollars than they have previously at the position, especially when it comes to sales? Like Warren and Burrell, those guys are, in between the top 50 and top 100. But Sales is a 5-star prospect. So, that would require quite a bit when it comes to NIL. So I think that, again, it's kind of see it to believe it. I do think they'll find a way to land one of those guys, or maybe like Matthew Gregory is another top 100 wide receiver that's very interested. But I think aside from NIL, these guys have to get familiar with the coaching staff. There aren't a lot of pre-existing relationships. I think the hiring of Marcus Hagans, the new assistant wide receivers coach, helps. He was at Penn State and did have some familiarity with some of these guys. But for the most part, I think they need to get familiar with the actual wide receivers coach, Micah Simon, new head coach Kyle Whittingham, new offensive coordinator Jason Beck. So I think, right now it's kind of to be determined. So on top of, meeting the new staff and getting more familiar with them and NIL, that they also just want to see what this offense looks like, I'm sure, this fall. So, we'll see how things play out in 27. Lou says, EJ, now that coaches are in place, have you reconnected with Sales? What are his thoughts now? Hearing Malachi Lee, now his uncles were coached by Whittingham. Does that sway Obot or Moa to come to Michigan? So starting off with Sales, I think, again, he's just going to have to get familiarized with Simon and Whittingham. There isn't, a lot of familiarity there. I think if Michigan goes all in with NIL, they'll certainly have a chance, but we just haven't seen that. And I think you need to do that for a guy like Sales. In terms of Malachi Lee, he posted an update. He's not enrolling early, but he is still solid to Michigan, which is big. He's one of the more highly touted prospects in the 26th class. In terms of Obot and Moa, those guys are already enrolled at Utah. So best case scenario is they consider jumping in the transfer portal. I know the new staff has certainly given Michigan an opportunity, but as of right now, they are enrolled at Utah. Tyson Smith says, what do you think about us stealing Ryder Lyons after his mission? So top 100 quarterback Ryder Lyons is committed to BYU. He's set to go on a mission and will be serving in Orlando over the next year. Traditionally, Mormon missions are 2 years. Lyons is shorter, again, just 1 year. Still, my concern with Lyons is how will the mission impact him? Because when you go on a mission, you don't really have an opportunity to really train for football. You have like 30 minutes a day, and then you have like a free day to do stuff. But normally that's taken up by actually running errands, like getting food. So I'll be interested to see how the mission impacts Ryder Lyons, but I really love him as a prospect. There's a lot to like about his game. I think he has a lot of JJ McCarthy type of traits. When it comes to his commitment to BYU, remember, these guys that go on missions, they can come back and sign with another school. Like you saw Andrew Gentry come back from his mission and he signed with Michigan. So they sign basically like a financial aid agreement type of deal, but they can come back and they can sign with anybody. As of right now, Ryder's very happy with his commitment to BYU, but if something were to happen over the next year, Michigan would certainly have an opportunity. He's familiar with Jason Beck, the new OC. Kyle Whittingham recruited him at Utah. In fact, Utah was one of his earlier offers. I think he told me like a second offer or something like that. So, it's a situation to monitor in the future. As of right now, he's fully focused on going on his mission. Tyson Smith says, what was the best Christmas gift you got? I don't know. I didn't get a lot of great Christmas gifts this year. I got a cool like cast iron type of pot. It's not really a skillet. I got a Pikachu plushie. I got some Chucky underwear. That's basically all I got. Lou says, do you think Alex Whittingham coming from the Chiefs will be a positive role in linebacker recruiting? With that hire, does Cole Sullivan return after visiting SEC schools? Starting off with Cole Sullivan, like I said, I don't handle the players out, but I will say that, the visit to Oklahoma is a concern. I think he really fits Michigan and values the program a ton. I'm sure Michigan will be competitive with NIL. So it's definitely an interesting situation. With Alex Whittingham coming over to coach linebackers, I'm not too familiar with him as a recruiter, obviously, but I think that when you look at linebacker recruiting, you had Brian Jean Mary, who obviously struggled, and I think was one of Michigan's weaker, if not the weakest, assistant outside of like Wink, because he was old in the DC. But I think that Brian Jean Mary just didn't put up a lot of results. Now, Michigan also didn't really invest heavily in NIL, kind of like wide receiver. They did in some cases, like with Nathaniel Wusu Boateng, but you saw how disappointing the linebacker class was this past cycle. They didn't spend for a guy like Nick Abrams or a Shadarius Tootle or somebody like that. So I think Michigan needs to invest a little bit more in linebacker to really land those highly touted prospects. And even though I don't know much about Whittingham, the linebackers coach, not the head coach, I think that he can be an upgrade over Jean Mary just because Jean Mary wasn't good down the stretch. Ben Rickett says, which new member of this staff are you most excited about as a recruiter? For me, a lot of these guys, like the recruits too, like you saw a lot of recruits saying, I need to get more familiar, or I don't know a ton about them. And I don't want to sit here and lie to you guys and be like, oh yeah, all of these guys are great hires, they're great recruiters, because I honestly just don't know a ton about them yet. I cover blue blood programs. So I've covered Texas, briefly covered Notre Dame. I'm obviously on Michigan right now. So I just haven't we haven't had many mutual battles with Utah. So I don't have that familiarity with the coaches coming over from Utah. But I will say that Jim Harding has a great reputation as not just an elite recruiter, but an elite coach. I know Michigan had plenty of production when Sharon Moore was the offensive line coach, and Moore and Juan Castillo and Newsome all played a big role in offensive line recruiting and offensive line development. But I really do think that Jim Harding is a guy who can pick up right where they left off and even be better there. He's a savvy veteran. He's a guy who has been around for a long time, has put many guys in the NFL. And even though, he's a little bit on the older side, he's a guy who really does enjoy recruiting. And I've heard a lot of positive things about him as an actual recruiter. So I think Jim Harding's the guy that I'd probably be the most excited about. Ben Rickett says, do you think we will see a big overhaul regarding the recruiting department, or will most staffers stay, guys like Albert Carson or Sam Popper? I think that's still kind of up in the air. I'm really curious to see who Kyle Whittingham brings in to his recruiting department. I think you should definitely see more quality there. You've seen Michigan step up in terms of adding more bodies, but I'd like to see quality over quantity. Before we move on, we have a special message from our great sponsor, and that, of course, is MyPerfectFranchise. Are you trying to get into the business world? Do you want to own a Chick-fil-A? Well, not own, but franchise, obviously. Do you want to get into a Chick-fil-A? Do you want to get into a Taco Bell, a McDonald's? All this great fast food available for you just by signing up for MyPerfectFranchise. Andy Luedecke is your man. Andy Luedecke is the guy with the plan. You just have to hit him up over the phone, 404-973-9901, or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Andy has a long track record of helping people find their American dream through a very thorough consultation. Again, all you have to do is email him. He'll set up a Zoom call with you. You can call him. Andy is available all the time. And there's nobody that has better acumen in the franchising world than Andy Luedecke. So make sure to hit up Andy. And he's a guy who has expertise on other things too. It doesn't just have to be fast food. He has a lot of franchises in different segments, such as storage units or things you wouldn't even think of, tractors. I mean, there's a lot of things out there that are franchised. So make sure to head over to myperfectfranchise.net. Andy will find the right opportunity for you. Ben Rickett says, any 2026 recruits that you think Michigan could sign during the February signing period? There aren't a lot of recruits left out there, but I do think that Samson Gash could be an option. When you look at wide receiver recruiting, Michigan has kind of struggled in terms of landing true high-end speed. Samson Gash is a guy who has blazing speed, 10.5, 100-meter dash. He's a guy who, still probably needs a little bit of work in terms of being an actual wide receiver as far as route running, technical development, but a lot to like about his speed. Obviously, Michigan just doesn't really have a guy like him in the room. So I would love to see the Wolverines make a run at Samson Gash, especially when you look at the 2026 class, right? Like you had some speed guys committed. Zion Robinson, Michigan lost him on signing day. Brady Marquise, he asked out of his letter of intent. So Michigan left with 2 wide receiver signees in 2026, one being Travis Johnson, who I think can make an immediate impact, but the other being Jalen Pyle, who, I think is more of a depth piece than an actual contributor. So I would love to see Michigan take a flyer on Samson Gash, and customer service follows that up with any buzz with Samson Gash, Kelvin Obot, or Salisi Moa. And like I said, I think Michigan should take a look at Samson Gash, but not a lot of buzz right now. I think the new staff has to get settled in. And in terms of Obot or Moa, like I said earlier, they have enrolled at Utah. So the hope would be for them to entertain the portal. But as of right now, they are enrolled. Customer service says, has Sean McGee been given the green light to spend a checkbook, especially wide receiver? Will they spend on a Cam Coleman type wide receiver? I mean, Sean McGee's always had kind of more of an NFL salary structure to his approach. So, I don't think that there's an open checkbook to just spend at will. And therefore, I don't see them spending on a Cam Coleman at wide receiver. Customer service says, do you think we might get a big influx of New Mexico, Utah, or BYU transfers? There's a handful of Utah transfers. Haven't really heard much about BYU or New Mexico transfers. Like I said, the big ones for Utah, John Henry Daly and Smith Snowden. Luedecke says, any word on past Michigan targets commitments in the portal, such as the Smith twins, Andrew Olesh, the corners, Aaron Scott or Bryce West from Ohio State, that Michigan can circle back on? Haven't heard a lot of buzz on the former commits or targets. Obviously, this is a new staff, so most of those connections are gone. I could see Aaron Scott. It seems like there's a bit of interest there, especially with Kerry Coombs on staff. He was obviously at Ohio State when they did recruit Aaron Scott, so that could definitely be a connection. Tony Alford was there as well. I don't really see it with Bryce West, but Aaron Scott would be the one from that group that I would keep an eye on. Michelle Wallace says, Camden Lopati is committed to Illinois. He said he wants to give Michigan a look. Is that true? He's a 4-star quarterback. Yes, he is a 4-star in 2027. Michigan already has a quarterback commit in Peter Bork, but Lopati is interested, and he does have familiarity with the staff. So it'll be interesting to see what Michigan does at quarterback. Do they keep Bork? Does Bork want to stay? Do they look at other options? Do they take 2, given that there's no depth in the room? Really intriguing storylines to follow for 2027 quarterback recruiting. Michelle Wallace says, Traynard Roberts, a running back for Michigan, Michigan is in his top 3. Yeah, I just saw Traynard out in Orlando when I flew out there last week, and Michigan is definitely in his top 3. He almost committed to Florida actually early on, and they had their own coaching change. Now I think the door's really open for Michigan, even though, he doesn't have a ton of familiarity with Whittingham. The fact that Michigan retained Tony Alford, I think, helps out with Traynard Roberts quite a bit. You see here, he's ranked as the number 230 overall prospect in the country. Alford's been recruiting him for several years. So I think Michigan will have a good chance. He just has to come in this offseason and meet with the coaching staff. All right, guys, we are getting close to the end of the show. So make sure to ask any questions if you have them. We also have 200 viewers live right now, so we should have 200 likes. Make sure to like this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for free. Get notifications every time we drop new videos. Michelle Wallace says, do you see us losing anyone else? I understand that Zeke Berry is going to return to Michigan for his last season. Yes, Zeke Berry is returning. We'll see if anybody else hops in the portal. I'll leave that up to Chris Ballas and company. Like I said, I don't handle portal outs. I only handle portal ins. Customer service says, Ethan McDowell is the coolest. We need a sighting. When will he be on the show? Hopefully he'll be on the show next week. We'll see. Ryan says, what type of running back do you see Tony Alford landing in 2027? Bridge guy to 2028 type at Ohio State. He was famous for having 3 straight disastrous classes after J.K. Dobbins and Travion Henderson and left the room a mess. I don't think you'll see that at Michigan. I think Tony Alford's primed for sustained success at the running back position. That is a position that Michigan has spent NIL on, and I think they'll continue to do so. Maybe not in 2027 since they just landed Savion Hyder, but certainly in 2028. So, yeah, I think it'll be more of a bridge guy. You saw Traynard Roberts ranked number 230, kind of in that lower 4-star range. I think you could see that type of prospect. And don't get me wrong, Tony Alford's going to swing for the fences. He has Michigan involved with top 100 guys like Tyson Robinson or Noah Roberts, but Traynard, I think, is definitely a guy who could find his way into the class. Brendan Pagel says, which new coach are you excited about from a recruiting standpoint? Like I said, Jim Harding, very, very savvy veteran as both a coach and as a recruiter. David VU says, is Peter Bork still happy with Michigan after the coaching changes? He's given really positive comments. I don't think there's any reason to worry about Bork flipping right now. He really loves the Michigan program and committed for a reason. I think he just has to get more familiar with the new staff. And like I said, a lot of intriguing storylines around 27. Does Michigan try to take another quarterback? Does Bork stay happy? Does Bork end up looking at some of these other options? Does the staff prefer somebody else? I personally really hope that Bork stays in the class. I really like his game. Yes, Sam Stamos 542 says like button advertisement. Make sure to like the video. Steven Vargo 2440 says, are there any interior offensive linemen or defensive linemen Michigan is looking at in the portal? Telek Lockett out of Texas State is a guard prospect who's looking to set up a Michigan visit. We haven't heard too much about the defensive line, John Henry Daly being more of an edge, so you can consider him under that umbrella. Like I said, Dallas Vakahali from Utah would be another one to watch for now. Cool Ranch Maine says, I heard Mo is a done deal. Wondering if you've heard anything similar. He's a done deal in terms of he's enrolled at Utah, but that doesn't necessarily stop the process. I always bring up this story, and I actually shared it with Moa when I met with him last week. And Moa didn't rule out the portal as being an option either, because it's such a fluid situation when you have coaching changes and just the nature of the portal in general. But when I covered Texas, I covered Brew McCoy quite a bit. And for those of you that don't know, Brew was like a 5-star level wide receiver. He was torn between USC and Texas. And he was so torn. It was like a Jordan Elliott situation. Like, he was so torn, he didn't know what to do. So he was like, all right, I'm just going to enroll at USC since it's close to home and test it out. And then he ended up transferring to Texas. And then I think he finished his career at Tennessee. But, you could see a situation where players jump in the portal. Julian Sayin did it. He practiced with Alabama and then entered the portal. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities. David DeStefano says, any prospects from Florida for Michigan to target in 2027? Well, yeah, Traynard Roberts, we've talked about a lot. He's out in Florida. Charles Woodson Jr. being another one. That's obviously a big name, the son of a legend. He's out in the Orlando area. He's a borderline 3-4 star on the back end as a safety. So Charles Woodson Jr. and Traynard Roberts would probably be the biggest names down in Florida right now for 27. DJ Uhar says, what do you think is a good balance between recruiting and getting guys from the transfer portal? Is working the portal like Indiana a sustainable way to win long term? I don't know, man. I think schools like USC and Miami are really figuring out a good balance, and maybe more so Miami because they're having more success. But you saw like USC, they landed the number 1 recruiting class in the country, and then they, have put together a nice portal class early on. I've seen them land some guys. And then Miami historically has been great at getting, quarterbacks out of the portal. Their starter this year is a portal quarterback. Cam Ward was a portal quarterback. So And then they've built around some of their big portal wins with high-end recruiting. You know, Miami spends big bucks on the recruiting trail. And now I think a lot of people kind of made fun of Miami early on in the NIL era for just spending like crazy. But honestly, all those dollars are paying off, like they're in the Final Four. So I would say those are the two programs that really come to mind for me that have recently shown a really good balance of recruiting and portal. Caddy says, who's coming to visit in terms of receivers? No wide receivers scheduled to visit as of today, so we'll see. Cody says, just tuning in, what's the news on John Henry? Still no visit to report. I think the expectation is still that he will visit. We've talked to those in Michigan circles, and there's still optimism there. So he's visiting Notre Dame. That was kind of a bit of a surprise. We thought this was going to turn more into a Michigan BYU battle. So the Irish coming in strong, BYU still there. So we'll see how that one plays out. Cody says, do you think Teo Johnson was the reason for Jordan Young transferring? No, Teo Johnson hasn't visited yet. He's certainly on the radar. Smith Snowden is set to come in tomorrow, but I don't think the potential portal ads have anything to do with it. I think Jordan Young was really, really close to Lamar Morgan, and that certainly played a factor. And Cody, with his last question, says, any news on Andrew Olesh? Nothing to report there. David Stefano 738 says, any JUCO prospects to look at for 2027? I've been on Michigan for a little more than 6 years. They have never landed a JUCO prospect, so I would say no. All right, guys, thanks for joining me. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free, get notifications every time we drop new videos. As always, subscribe to thewolverine.com to get today 50% off your annual subscription. No promo code needed. Get the latest intel on everything portal, recruiting, the team, basketball, and so much more. Come over and join the fort where we have thousands and thousands of message board users. So 50% off your annual subscription. All right, guys, I will see y'all next week.